locked in.
Look at what we have here, folks.
To the only show that matters.
The cream of the crop.
Duke Loves Rasslin.
And there is no one that does it better than
your host.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
The Duke.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Man of the hour, man with the power, too sweet to be sour, baby. I know you love that right there, folks. Welcome back to Duke Loves Rasslin. I am the Duke, and yes, I enjoy doing pro wrestling impersonations, and I'm going to keep on doing them. No matter what my illustrious co-host, the Boston bad boy, Iron Mike Pelosi, says. Now, notice how you don't hear his voice yet, folks, and that is because the Duke is over at the secret bunker by himself. And you know why? Because this guy, okay, this slacker, decided after our 1-year anniversary special last week that he would just go out and celebrate. And how did he do that? He took a trip overseas. That's right, the Boston bad boy went on vacation. This guy, I'm telling you. So I'm in this secret bunker by myself here, but listen, let me tell you something. The show must go on. I don't care if he wants to vacation or not. He has an obligation to you, the great fans of Duke Loves Rasslin. So I got him on the line right now, folks. Without further ado, Boston bad boy, say hello to the fans of Duke Loves Rasslin.
Please tell me you didn't call me in the middle of the night to put me on the show.
I did. How you doing?
There's something wrong with you. There's something. I was doing well. It's 3 a.m, so I was sleeping.
Well, listen, wake up, okay? There's no rest for the wicked there, and let me tell you something. We already know that about you,
pal.
Do
you know what vacation means?
No.
Do you have any idea what it means?
No. I mean, look.
It means vacation away from work, vacation away from family I don't want to deal with, vacation away from you who I don't want to deal with. And here you got me on a long-distance call.
Yeah.
Halfway around the world.
That's right. Where in the world is the Boston bad boy
I
right
am
now?
Currently in London, the United Kingdom.
Oh, very nice.
Yes.
Cheerio.
Chip, pip, pip. It would have been nice if you called me during the day, but you don't have the sense to do that.
Well, listen, you got to wake up. You got to get your act together. That's what it comes down to.
Do you remember during Live Aid that Phil Collins took the Concorde so that he could play Live Aid in England, and then he flew to Philadelphia so he could play both shows?
Sure.
I would never do that for you.
Oh, okay.
I want to be left alone. And how long do you plan on keeping me on this show? Because, again, I'm on vacation, so I don't know,
Listen, we're going to keep you on for as long as necessary, okay? That's right. So, folks, this is our first show after our 1-year anniversary, and we're going to be going strong here. And we got a great show for you today. Listen to this. How much match time and overall TV time do the women in the WWE receive? Okay? And what about the women of color on the roster? Well, guess what? We have the Analytical Kate. She's coming on to talk about that and so much more. We're going to dig into the data. Forget about your opinions. Forget about your biases. We're going to go straight to the data and find out what's really going on.
Could you have just sent me a report? I mean, she sounds like a really great guest, but you could have just summed it all up, sent me a condensed report instead of waking me up while I'm on my vacation.
Relax. If you know what? Maybe I'll let you go when I have Kate on the line. We'll see, okay? We'll hold on there. But
you're going to owe me so many sandwiches for this.
We'll see about that. I mean, you're the one over there in England. Maybe you can bring me a sandwich,
Trust
okay?
Me, you don't want to eat food over here.
Lord of Sandwich, that's right. We also have the top 5 stories in the world of professional wrestling. But before we get to any of that, Boston bad boy.
Yes.
What's been the best part of your trip so far?
Well, I do enjoy coming here. I visit friends, and I do love the British sense of humor. It's always my favorite thing because, like me, they are educated, and they have a good sense of humor, better than, you, for instance.
Oh, God.
And, a lot of times, they have the accent that makes them sound smarter than, maybe they necessarily are. But, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. It's just how you say it, which I pretty much have built my career on. So, they're my people. I feel like I'm with my
They're my people. So wait, now I know that you have a GoldenEye, the video game.
Yes.
I know you have a tournament coming up.
Well, that's it. Yes, my good friend Ryan always thinks that he can beat me in GoldenEye. And every time I go to London, I try and get over here, maybe once every 2 years or so, once a year if possible. We always make sure we set aside time where either his girlfriend or my girlfriend aren't going to kill us, and we can dedicate 5 or 6 hours to having a knockdown, drag-out N64 GoldenEye tournament.
Wow. Well, I got some
And
advice.
I usually win because he's not here to defend himself, so I'm just going to say that I usually win. And I know for a fact that I'm going to do better against him than you did against Babam.
Give me a
So
break.
you can,
Give me
you
a
can
break.
put that in your pipe and smoke it, Jack.
Well, listen, I'm going to give you some advice. Do not cause an international incident.
Trust
Let him win.
Trust me.
Okay.
The professional politicians in this world have already caused so many on behalf of
Exactly.
America. I think I'm good. I'm pretty low on the total.
They will not let you back in this country if you win that tournament, okay? So I'm just telling you.
Wall of chocolate.
Yeah, you'll be on the other side of it, pal. Well, listen, you make sure that you be safe and sound over there in the UK. I know we have some of our...
I always mind the gap
yeah.
when I'm on the tube.
Well, we got some great listeners out there. We have L. Lewis. We have Maddie B. with our cat Stannis.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
There are lots of pets with funny human names.
Yes, exactly.
Stannis the cat.
Stannis the cat. You know, I got a problem with that Stannis the cat because he thinks he's so special.
Well,
know?
if you did your business in a box and other people came and cleaned it out, you'd have that kind of attitude too.
Unbelievable.
You inflate someone up like that. What are you going to do? And also with the British, already they have this inflated sense of self-worth. Think about what a cat's going to do. Jeez.
You know what? I'm going to run the ropes, and I'm going to hang up on you now. It's time to run the ropes. I give my opinion on the top 5 stories in the world of professional wrestling, but to celebrate the Boston Bad Boy being overseas, I'm going to give the top 5 stories in the international world of professional wrestling. So, let's go. Is Sexy Star retiring? Breaking news, folks, according to Fightful and also Diva Dirt, which is one of my favorite websites out there, Lucha Underground wrestler Sexy Star. Now, she had to go on record, all right, and dispel all the rumors out there. Quote, I never said I'd retire from pro wrestling, but we'll see what happens and what opportunities come my way as a boxer. Can you believe that? She's going to be like a two-sport athlete. She's going to be wrestling. She's going to be boxing. And look, she can beat up anybody. I've seen her fight men and still look good doing it. Sexy Star is the real deal. What's going to happen? If she has a boxing match, you stay tuned to Duke Loves Rasslin on Facebook and on Twitter because you know I'm going to post it. Trent Seven defends his title. Yes, folks, as seen at WrestleMania Access and covered by WrestleRopes UK, Insane Championship Wrestling champion Trent Seven, he successfully defended his championship against Wolfgang. I don't really like that Wolfgang. He's kind of a weirdo. But Seven had turned a lot of heads lately, okay, because he's not only touring all over the UK, but he's been wrestling here in the States. He even wrestled on NXT. Will this guy turn his back on the UK and wrestle exclusively in the United States for the WWE? Or is he going to continue to play a little game, dip his toe in the WWE water, but stay true to his UK roots? Stay tuned. Dalton Bragg invades Mexico. Yes, folks, as seen on the Duke Loves Rasslin Facebook page, the arrogant atheist Dalton Bragg, he made his debut for AAA in Mexico. Okay? Now, AAA is the biggest pro wrestling organization south of the border, and this is a really huge deal for Dalton. Keep in mind, he is the former Middle Kingdom Wrestling China heavyweight champion. So he's already invaded there. Now he's invading Mexico. He started off in Colorado. I mean, this guy is just all over the world. Will he go for a championship in AAA? Or is he there just to bust people up? Stay tuned to find out. Manami Toyota set to retire. Yes, folks, that's right, as seen on the Duke Loves Rasslin Facebook page. Toyota. She has announced that she'll retire in November of 2017. That's this year. Now, look, this is 30-plus years of having her body beat up And I guess the injuries are starting to catch up for the legend, folks. Now, she's one of my top wrestlers. In fact, she's number 3 on my list, right behind Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan. So, I'm a little upset about her retiring, but I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to be running for the next week. I'm going to post my 7 favorite Toyota matches so you can see how fantastic she was. I mean, you talk about 5-star matches across the board. Just an unbelievable performer. One of the greatest in history. Toyota, the Duke loves you. The number 1 story in the international pro wrestling world is Lucha Underground having issues. Yes, folks, as covered on WrestleZone.com and as seen on the Duke Loves Rasslin Facebook page, Lucha Underground is in danger of going under. I mean, a combination of financial issues and disgruntled wrestlers has put the entire company in jeopardy, okay? Now, I'm a firm believer in the more wrestling organizations we have, the better, because let me tell you something. These wrestlers, they can make money around the world, they can feed their families and what have you there, and if they can only go to 1 or 2 places around, then that's really not good, okay? Then their wages go down and their conditions worsen. I hope Lucha Underground makes it because the fans are starting to dig it, and they have this new thing going on with Netflix, so they're getting more exposure. But hey, you got to take care of the wrestlers, guys, okay? So if they're disgruntled, figure it out, take care of the wrestlers, do the right thing. You've heard what I think. Now, what do you think? Do you think I'm a jerk? Do you agree with me? Maybe somewhere in between? Head over to Facebook. Head over to Twitter. Type in Duke Loves Rasslin. Sign off and let me know. Up next, the Analytical Kate.
This is Simply Luscious, and you are listening to Duke Loves Rasslin.
Folks, within the past few years, the WWE has prided itself on its focus to deliver more women's wrestling action, okay? They even refer to it as the Women's Revolution. I mean, goodness, everything from articles and media interviews, even WWE Network specials. There's this whole concept around giving women a chance within the WWE, especially on their flagship show, Monday Night Raw, and even on the pay-per-views. My question is this really happening, or is this just some kind of marketing ploy? And it's a serious question, and hey, you can have your opinions all day long, but what happens when you actually take a look at the raw data? So I scoured the internet, searched far and wide. Does anybody actually have the data that we can dig into and really start answering some of these questions? Well, guess what? I found her, okay? I'm talking about a person who has been tracking this for a little while now, and she decided to come on Duke Loves Rasslin just for you folks here. We got an exclusive here. So without further ado, welcome to the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast, Analytical Kate. How are you, Kate?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic, and I really appreciate you coming on the show because you got some great stuff going on over there.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Now, listen, before we even dig into the data, first and foremost, you're a graphic designer by trade. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
So what made you decide to get into graphing this WWE Women's Revolution stuff?
I'm a graphic designer, and so within that, infographics has kind of like been a field in our design realm, and outside of the wrestling realm that's kind of like grown to be more important because, I do a lot of like reports in my daytime job, and people get really bored by just numbers and by just words, and so you kind of need something to draw them in, and people like graphics and people like images. And so with that in mind, a couple years before I started the project, I had just gotten back into watching wrestling, and I had taken a brief hiatus, and I was watching, and I had grown up in the Attitude Era. So the idea of a women's revolution, like in WWE at least, was completely foreign to me. But as I'm watching it and getting back into Raw, and this is before Charlotte and Sasha and all them kind of came up, I started getting on Twitter and talking to people and just seeing people kind of comment on the fact that the women weren't getting a lot of time. And when I was growing up watching Raw, it was kind of the same thing, but I kind of didn't want to see them is the best way, because I didn't want to see the women because it was almost like, for one, it was almost like a bathroom break, and for two, like, a lot of the segments involving the women made me uncomfortable. So really, for me, it was like, I want this to end as quickly as possible. But now that they're doing, wrestling and being taken a little bit more seriously, it was kind of like, well, how much time are they actually getting? And so I actually started tracking just the segments of the women before I started the Raw Breakdown Project, and just timing them and giving a total at the end of Raw, just being like, oh, they only had like 5 minutes, or they only had 6 minutes. And for a show that, on average is about 185 minutes, you got some time for commercials, but that's a commercial break. That's literally a commercial break within the show when you already have all these commercial breaks. And so, it started, other things happened, and I was like, well, I needed like infographic experience for, my portfolio. And I was like, well, what could I track? And it's like, well, I could track the women, but I need to figure out in comparison, what else are they doing on Raw? And so it was, am I incorrect in just timing the women? Is it fair to just time the women when it's like, well, what else do they have to show on a week-to-week basis? Because it's not, they don't have a lot of women on their roster. That's the argument. It's like, well, there's only like 6 or 7 women. We have all these men. But I started tracking Raw as a whole and seeing, like, where do they spend their time? Like, on a week-to-week basis, like, what are they doing? Like, how much time is dedicated to commercials? But without that, like, how much time is spent on promos? How much time is spent on backstage segments? And then, again, how much time is spent on just the women? So it's kind of that was where the jumping off point was.
Wow, and that's a lot there. So you actually have been measuring Raw as a show, which is a 3-hour-long show.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. How long have you been tracking this data?
The first episode that I tracked was May 4th of 2015.
Okay.
So it'll be 2 years next month.
Wow. Okay. So which is a very good sample size. So
yeah.
this is, you've been tracking this through seasons, through, as far as the WWE fiscal year, you've gone into numerous fiscal years where they restart everything. Like right now, we're in the beginning of the new fiscal year, so everything is reset. New storylines, new everything here. So that you've been doing that since May of 2015. That's excellent. Okay, so you said you wanted to focus on the women because they were promoting this women's revolution stuff. So let's just jump right into it. Is there truly a women's revolution?
Yes and no, because I don't want to, for me to say there's no women's revolution, considering, what WWE has done, and that's always, I have people ask me, well, they've done this, they've changed them, they're no longer divas, they're superstars, and then last year they were given, they don't have the butterfly belt anymore, they have a belt that looks like, the Universal title, and same thing on SmackDown, and they have been given more time, and then Sasha and Charlotte had a series of matches, like the first ever tables match, first ever hardcore match, all this kind of stuff. And so I don't want to discredit what they're doing, but at the same time, it's not that it's not enough. It's just that I feel like they could be doing more. Like I feel like I feel like they could just be doing more, and I know, I think I know that it's a marketing plan, but if you're going to do it, own it. Just go all the way with it.
That's right. If you're going to say you're going to do something, then really invest in it. So let's go back to 2015. What are some of the trends that you saw specifically with the women's roster as a whole? So without breaking them down into any other subcategories, just women as a whole, what were you noticing as far as their television time and what have you?
So let's see, going back to the very first episode of, so I did May 4th, 2015. and this was back when they were called the Divas, and this was right around the time when they were having the give Divas a chance kind of hashtag going out. And I timed segments with a diva and superstar present, and then segments with only a diva presence, meaning that it was just women on TV. It wasn't like a valet. It wasn't, in the background or anything like that, because I think at that time they had, the women backstage, like they had some hosts come on Raw and they would be like the greeting crew. 13% of segments had divas and superstars. Only 1% of the segments on Raw had just the women. Like,
wow.
It was dedicated just the women. Like, that was the very first episode. And that show went until 11/11. And they had to, yeah.
So, that 1% of a 3-hour show had just women featured, you're saying?
Yep.
And that's going back to May 2015.
Yep.
Did that start to change at all, at least for the year 2015? Did you start to see that increase at all?
So I'm looking up and I'm scrolling, and from the next time they had it was 11% on May 25th. So, but in between that, it was only 5 and 4%. So it wasn't consistent. So, they would have something a little bit higher one week, but then next week they'd be back down to 4. I tried to find when I did, over the course of that year, it was really just up and down. And, there was right before the July 13th episode, which is when they brought up Charlotte, Sasha, and Becky. It was really like the highest it had ever been was 11%, but the average was it was below 6%.
Wow.
6% of airtime.
Now, and just for the purpose of scale here, what percentage of the show is commercial breaks?
On average, it's between probably between 25 and 30%, depending. And that's really like, for a while I was kind of tracking just regular commercials that everyone, at least in the United States, would see, and then tracking what percentage of that was WWE, because, you have your typical television show. They have about, a segment of their show is going to be dedicated to commercial time because you have to pay for it. But WWE also buffers the actual commercial breaks that any other show would have with their own commercials.
That's right.
The network or the shop or for the upcoming pay-per-view or something like that. And so it's a little bit more than your average television show, but at the same time, I would say it's probably like a minute and 30 seconds more per segment.
Unbelievable.
And but that's the thing, is that that was one of the arguments, was that WWE had too many commercials. And it's like, it's not that they have too many commercials, it's what they do, because I don't know how it works. If they sit down with advertisers and they go, you have to do X number of commercials per time, or you can split it up however you want, or what. But it's about 25 to 30%.
Wow.
And they throw their own in. So sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes it's a little bit less. It's usually a little bit more in like the third hour because I think they're trying to compensate for the overtime. But yeah, so they're contending with that. They really have 75% every hour. They have 75% of airtime to deal with, and over the course of 3 hours, they're only able to dedicate 6% to women. And it's not spread out over 3 hours. They get lumped all into one segment.
One big segment, then you're done. And it's not even a big segment. That's amazing.
Exactly.
Now, let me ask you this, and forgive me if I get too deep in the weeds here, because we know that as the seasons change, there are different things that the WWE, specifically Monday Night Raw, is competing with on television. For instance, when we get to the fall and what have you, they're competing with the NFL. Right? And especially Monday Night Football. That's huge, huge, huge.
Oh, yeah.
When we get to the springtime, there's baseball going on and things like that. They don't have as much competition on a Monday night in comparison. Did you see any trends, just in general, not just taking 2015, but just in general? Are you seeing any trends where certain months each year seem to be more geared towards an increase in female representation on Raw as opposed to other months during the year?
That's a really good question, and I didn't notice anything personally just because I watch a little bit of sports, but not enough to kind of have that coherence in my head. I can tell when Raw is waiting for halftime at football, because that's when, a big segment with Seth Rollins or Triple H or Vince McMahon, if they're on that night, they will wait until halftime. Like, it's noticeable, and I think other people will pick up on it too, but I can tell, oh, this must be halftime because the big thing that they're waiting for all night, they've waited. And they don't do that with the women. I think that's the thing that's always been really interesting, is that it's never been a gradual increase or a gradual decrease. It's really up and down. It's not consistent from week to week. And I think for me, that's a frustrating thing, because if every week for 3 months the women got 15%, that's the standard, I'm not okay with it, but if that's what you're doing, then fine. But from week to week, it's not consistent.
They're all over the place. I got you.
They're all over the place.
So let's go from May 2015 to May 2016. Did we see any measurable increase in the amount of time that women were getting? Once again, the women as a whole. Do we see any measurable increase that women were getting on Monday Night Raw?
So my baseline that I made for myself, that I assumed that WWE thought was appropriate, I took it from in 2015 when Sasha, Bayley, and Charlotte debuted, because that was the start of the women's revolution. That was when Stephanie McMahon came on screen and acknowledged that this was a thing that was happening, and we're going to do it, and so we're going to bring up these women. And that's when they started kind of like the faction wars. And that night, it was 9%. And so that, for me, I established that as the baseline. That, for WWE, was an appropriate amount of time to dedicate to the women. That might not be true, but for me, that was kind of like, that it should be around there, if that's what you're going to do. And it increased a little bit, and it did for a little bit up until, actually through 2015, and then from the beginning of 2016, no. It was around, some of them were around 9%. At that point, the average from July 13th to 2015 to May 2nd, 2016, when I did my annual report, the average was 8%.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then what about from then till now? Where are we at? What's our average now?
Let's see, I'm going to 2017. And it's kind of back and forth. It's been better since the brand split, but it was some weeks it would be the highest it's ever been. It's never until very recently. The highest it's ever been was 16%, and then post. Actually, I don't think it's ever gone above 16%. That's the highest it's ever been, and that could be 2 weeks in a row, and the next week it'll be 5.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, folks, we're talking to Analytical Kate. She's done some pretty interesting work here, where she's taken Monday Night Raw specifically and the women's revolution. Are women actually getting the television time that would justify saying that we have a women's revolution in WWE wrestling here? Kate, you also do subgroups, which I really found interesting. You've taken a look at the women of color in the WWE and how much time they're getting. Did you notice any significant differences relating to the women of color and how much time they get as opposed to women who are not of color in the WWE?
So at least with Raw, and I actually I didn't start tracking that up until fairly recently, just because I was noticing on SmackDown that this was post when they split the rosters down, because if somebody isn't on Raw, then there's a solid chance they'll see them the next night. So once they started doing the brand split, and I started watching Raw and SmackDown, and I don't track SmackDown as a whole, but as I was watching it, I was starting to notice that it felt very white compared to Raw. And I and I didn't. It wasn't something that you would really notice until you actually look for it, I feel. And so I was like, well, let me look at Raw and see how they do it. And Raw, usually because they have Nia Jax and Sasha Banks and Bayley, like, they're pretty consistent. Like, there was one week where every single segment was 100%. Every single segment that they had on Raw that night, even if it was a little short, they had all the women were represented. Whereas on SmackDown, it wasn't so much because Naomi was out for a while, then Nikki was out for a while, and then that's it. and if I'm wrong and not remembering somebody off the top of my head, but Raw for the most part has the representation. It's just the overall time that's the issue.
Wow, and look, folks, this is a big deal here, okay? Because we're literally talking about diversity within the WWE and women of color, because the women's roster is significantly smaller than the men's roster. So, I mean, you could have a significant swing depending on, who's in what match. But you said something interesting. You brought up Nikki Bella. A lot of folks don't realize this, but, she is a Latina. So, we don't want to pass her off and what have you. Some of the listeners out there saying, what do you mean, Nikki Bella? Yeah, she's a Latina. She's a woman of color.
And I made that mistake myself because I don't watch Total Bellas or anything like that, so I didn't really know of her background. And so one week I did the SmackDown, and somebody was like, well, what about Nikki? And I was like, oh crap, what do you mean about Nikki? And I was like, oh, let me go back and go track her segments. And so, yeah, that's why I try to be very careful about it, because I'm a white woman, and so I want to make sure that I'm not accidentally, not remembering anybody. And so, yeah, it's there. It's just, it's not as there as it could be.
Well, I respect the fact that you admit that you didn't necessarily know that, naturally, that she was a woman of color, and that's something that you learned later on, because that definitely affects your numbers too. Because there was a pretty significant period of time before she was out with her neck injury where she was in a lot of the segments. So that's a good call out there. Look, just to veer off for a second here, do you do this type of tracking for any other industries, just for comparison's sake?
You mean like in wrestling or just outside of wrestling?
Even outside of wrestling. Do you do any of this other analytical work for other businesses and industries where you're looking at these sort of trends?
I don't personally. I work with people. I work for a state agency here in Virginia that we work as a criminal justice agency, and so we do a lot of crime trend reports.
Oh, yes.
And so we have a whole department that does the actual research part, but I've sat with them and we've kind of worked out they have all the data, and then I will do the design part, and so they kind of get all the numbers out of the way and do all the trends, and I kind of make the graphics for it.
Well, the good part about that is because they're giving you all of that stuff, you're making the graphics, you're consuming the data. So you're organizing it. You still have to understand what you're doing, which I guess that helps explain why you're so good at tracking the WWE here. Now, you said that they went from 2015 to, from 1% up to 9%, but they had about an 8% base. And the high that they've had, even up to this point, is about 16%.
I would say, yeah, it's about 16%. There might be a week where it was higher than that, but I don't think it's ever hit 20%. I think it's always been, it's always been below 20%.
Wow, and once again, 25 to 30% of each Raw that you've tracked here, that's going towards commercial breaks. So, the rest of that time is going somewhere. Right?
Yeah.
So you can level with me here, because I have my theories, and I'm glad that I have somebody who studies the numbers. So this isn't your opinion. You're providing us with facts here. This is something that you study. Mm-hmm. I have a theory that, especially on Monday Night Raw, the reason, or at least part of the reason why the women aren't getting enough airtime is because the WWE is wasting time on a guy who, quite frankly, he's my arch nemesis, okay? He's a guy who, he's a punk, okay? And I hope that he gets out of this business, gets rid of the contract, and gets out of my life. And I'm talking about none other than Roman Reigns, okay?
Oh,
so I want you, Analytical Kate, I brought you on. You know, you're the expert. You've been crunching the numbers here. I want you to tell the whole world that at least part of the reason why the WWE is making a mistake of not providing women with more time is because they're spending too much time wasted on Roman Reigns. Tell them right now, Kate.
I can't tell you that. I can't tell you that.
Is Roman Reigns threatening you, and that's why you can't tell? Because just, cough, and I understand.
I mean, he did take a photo with something I designed. He did take a photo with the Smart Tears mug I designed.
Oh, so he paid you off. I got it.
Oh, yeah.
Bribery.
Yeah, we have an arrangement. Fudge some numbers for him. No, I pulled up last year's annual report because I actually did a study of the guy in last year's annual report where I tracked the appearance counts of the WWE World Heavyweight Champion to appearance counts of Roman Reigns. And the argument was always like, even when he wasn't champ, he was on TV being shoved down their throats.
True, very true.
No, he wasn't. Like, it feels that way, I think, because you don't like him. I think it's one of those things where it's like you just don't like something so much. Like, I think people have a thing where if you don't like the sound of somebody chewing, and it's like a whole thing. And for a regular, for a person that doesn't have that issue, you don't really hear it. But if you have that issue, it's just like in your head and it's taking over and you just get so angry. And so I feel like Roman Reigns is that mouth chewing for a lot of people. It's just, even if he's in the background, even if he has a 30-second segment walking to the ring, it's just like he's shoved down our throats. I'm like, well, no, they do a 30-second walk to the ring with everybody else that has a match.
Okay. All right. Kate, let me explain something to you here, Kate. Okay? And this is very important here. I did not bring you on Duke Loves Rasslin to side with my arch nemesis, Roman Reigns. Okay? I thought that you were somebody who had this tremendous integrity and you're doing this great work and all of that. And then you have the audacity to embarrass me in front of my listeners by sticking up for that no good Roman Reigns. I don't understand it, Kate. Where do we go wrong here?
I think it's just, I'm not saying that he's perfect. I'm not saying that he is, the best. I think it's really just, I'm not saying he's booked well either. It's just a very, it's funny because at this point now in 2017, everybody's reacting. I feel that everybody is reacting the way that they're supposed to, and I say that with air quotes, in that this is very intentional. Like, WWE is not stupid. They know, they can hear you. They can hear you booing, but they also can hear people cheering, and he's making them money, and I'm really sorry he's your arch nemesis. But there's lots of people that he's not their arch nemesis. And so we're just going to have to... There's plenty of guys on WWE that I don't like. Kane was my arch nemesis for a very long time. Even as a child, I didn't want him on my television because he scared me. And then as an adult, I was just like, oh, this is too much. I can't have corporate Kane on my television. This is too much like work.
Listen, you're not going to disrespect the future mayor out there in Tennessee there. I'm not going to stand for this now, Kate. All right, it's bad enough you stuck up for Roman Reigns.
I know. Roman Reigns and now Kane. What, on my first appearance, too. I'm making quite the impression.
I'm telling you, I don't know what to do with you here. Listen, if fans want to reach out to you, because you're a graphic designer, and I've taken a look at your work. You do some great work. And we have a lot of listeners who, they have their own businesses, but a lot of wrestlers listen to our show, and they're always looking for graphic designers to help them out with their websites or T-shirt design, you name it, what have you. How can folks reach you if they want to get in touch with you for business purposes there?
So if you want to reach me, the best way is through my website. It's called HeyHeyIt'sKateForay.com, and then that's where you can see my work. And if you dig it, I have a contact form, and you just shoot me an email, what you're looking for. And I have my phone on me basically attached to my hip. And so I will see it, and I'll try to get back to you within a day, and we can talk about it. And I'm actually available for freelance work right now, so if you want to hit me up for some design work, let's talk about it.
Can you spell the website for us, please?
Yes. HEYITSKATES, as in Frank, ORAY.com.
Oh, cool. Hey, it's KateForey.com. And what about our listeners who, just fans of the show that don't appreciate you taking the side of my arch nemesis? If any of them want to reach out to you and complain about the way that you started off great and then you went down the wrong path, how can they reach you to send you complaints?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have one of those. No. If you want to check out my Twitter, just follow me at Make It Loud. It sounds exactly how it is. MAKEITLOD.
Wow. How did you get that one? Look at it. You're lucky, huh? Make It Loud.
I signed up way before everyone else did on Twitter, forgot about it for a couple of years, and I was like, I should probably actually start using this account.
Yeah. That's a really good one. Listen, Analytical Kate, I appreciate most of your analytical work. The Roman Reigns thing really disappointed me, but they are the facts, so I guess I'm going to have to accept them for now. WWE, you're not off the hook, though. I don't care what she says, especially you, Roman Reigns. Can we have you back a couple months from now to see if there have been any changes in the way that women are presented on WWE television?
Absolutely. I'd love to be back.
Well, folks, Analytical Kate, she was fantastic, huh? Although that whole Roman Reigns thing, I'm not too thrilled with, as you can imagine. Goodness. Up next, listen, the Boston bad boy, he's still on vacation, so you already know Duke's going to have something special for you. But before I get to any of that, like we told you last week on the anniversary special, you got to head over to Barnyard Cheese. That's right, Barnyard Cheese over there, barnyardcheese.com. You can take a look at their menu. And if you're in New York City and you visit them, you have to get the Duke sandwich, okay? The greatest sandwich in the history of life. What are you waiting for? Head over to Barnyard Cheese and tell them Duke sent you. Enjoy.
Okay, folks, you've got Susan Tex Green here, one of the only women to beat the fabulous Moolah. Look in the record books, you'll see me. I love wrestling with the Duke. Look forward to seeing all y'all. And be with La Alamo.
Folks, I'll tell you, I love to hear Susan Tex Green's voice. I mean, it just tickles me every time I hear that. Shout out to the Raging Texan, Susan Tex Green, the legend. This part of the show, we usually do Ask Duke, where, I answer your listener-submitted questions, and the Boston bad boy reads them off. But because this guy's a slacker and he's overseas, I have none of your listener-submitted questions to answer. So instead, I'm just going to talk about some things that are on my mind.
Well, you know what? I hate to spoil your parade because you forgot to hang up the phone. And this whole time, through the whole interview, which is great, I just sat back, and I enjoyed myself. I got a glass of warm milk so I can go back to bed when I'm ready to go. But, there's been some things on my mind. And because you forgot to hang up the phone because you are a
stupid idiot,
I'm going to now talk about what I want to talk about.
How did you get the sound effects on your end there? What is going on here?
Don't worry about it. It's because you are a
stupid idiot.
And I am not, okay? So that's how I know how to do these things. I take the time to learn, okay? I'm a little more subdued because it's very late at night. I don't want to wake anybody up. But I have some problems. And my biggest problem is, as we touched upon the past few weeks, the WWE's response to this whole bullying thing.
Oh, no.
Because right now I'm feeling a little bullied by you calling me in the middle of the night when I'm on vacation. So we're going to talk about a real case of bullying, something that shouldn't be pushed aside, something that deals with somebody who already has challenges with their own health. Explain to me, fill me in on what the WWE's been doing, because I'm going to cut you off anyway and tell you it's not enough. But I want to hear you try and make some hay out of it.
Well, look. They've been investigating what happened, okay? And you got to keep in mind, this is an HR issue, okay? So this is an internal WWE organizational thing here. So even though they're a publicly traded company, they're not going to necessarily discuss the inner workings of these serious things going on.
They have to because you said it. They're a publicly traded company, and guess what? They're on television. So, and this is something that involves people who are on television. There is social media. The cat is out of the bag. It's like Trump complaining about leaks. It's just the world that you live in. You've got to deal with the reality. So, guess what? The facts are actually seeping out through social media, through the reporting that is being done. And they're not holding up their end by doing an official investigation on something that's a real serious issue. I'm not being facetious here. This is who this happened to is somebody who struggles. So I don't care if it was somebody who was 100% fine with themselves, which probably doesn't exist. But not only do we have a wave of, and it's still happening, victim blaming, that this guy, it's because of his issues that he's so quote unquote offended by what was going on. We have a company that refuses to do the right thing and get to the bottom of it and put it past them. And I have to think it comes down, as it always does, to the mighty manipulative Vince McMahon and his love of the almighty dollar. Because look at what happened to United Airlines. A couple of weeks ago, when United Airlines dragged that person, a paying customer, forcibly off the plane like he was groping the woman next to him, and he did nothing wrong. They pulled him off. They busted his face up. He lost a tooth. Their stock fell like the value of like $800 million. What? Could you imagine what that would do to a guy so obsessed with money like Vince McMahon?
All right. You know what? You're bringing up United Airlines. You're talking about missing teeth.
Tell me what it is. You just said that the company is conducting an investigation. This is an inherent flaw in the company culture, okay? But don't tell me no one knows what's going on.
Well,
they know it's there. They may not see it as a flaw, but what's the investigation?
You don't rush an investigation. Okay.
How many biographies have come out or books have been written by people who have worked for the WWE in various capacities, announcers, ring guys, other wrestlers, that there is an extensive culture of hazing that goes on. And listen, I'm not saying that this is just the WWE. I'm sure this happens in every sports. Every time people get together, there's bound for this to happen in large organizations. But right now, the story is this. And why is the WWE continuing to allow it to happen when these sort of tell-all books have come out? Explain that to me. Explain how they can look the other way. Let me ask you this. If there was somebody who worked for the WWE, and had a disease like something very obvious, had a disease like cancer, okay, and had to go to chemotherapy and lost their hair and had radiation, lost their hair. And then the WWE, would they do a thing where they did a whole bit about how the guy has no hair and call him baldy?
I mean, I don't even know why I'm letting you continue to talk because you're rambling at this point.
There is a correlation there. It's okay for this guy to be picked on because he has a mental illness?
No, it's not okay. No one's saying it's okay.
But by omission, they're saying it's okay.
Let me explain something to you, okay? When it comes to having to investigate something, you don't want the investigators to rush. You want them to take their time. You want them to take a fine-tooth comb and go through whatever the heck is going on out there to make sure they get it right. It's like what our former president, Barack Obama, said. I got to know whose ass to kick, okay? So the WWE, hopefully, are just taking their time. And I'm okay with that. I will say that they are going to have to put out a statement at some point, and it's getting a little rough here because it's been over 2 weeks and it still hasn't happened yet. But give me a break. You know what I mean? It's like as long as they fix the problem, and hopefully they do, it is what it is. All right, I'm not going to tell this guy how to run his business and what have you. I have my trust in Vince McMahon. He's my friend. What do you want me to do?
First of all, Vince McMahon is only friends with the money in his pocket and the people he can figure out how to manipulate at the time. There's no way that a guy like him is going to look at this problem in any other way than a money problem. I think this whole thing with ESPN being distanced from reporting on it, I think that was a calculated move. Again, what's the value of the contract with ESPN for the WWE?
You keep bringing that up.
Well, but just think about the numbers here. Let's just throw some numbers around. Look at how much money United lost, $800 million. Now, the WWE could lose. They're worth more than that. They're worth, what, $2 billion?
Yeah.
WWE. So they theoretically could lose $800 million, but they don't want to lose $800 million. Who would want to? So if they say, let me see, if I terminate the contract with ESPN and cause bad blood there, they won't cover us. Okay, they're not going to cover us, so I'm going to lose $30 million, but that's going to save me from losing $600 million down the road.
No, you're just being ridiculous. You're making nonsense up.
It's a game of attrition. It's simple as that.
You know what, folks? I can't take this anymore. I'm done. I'm cutting. I'm pulling the plug on this guy because he.
The funny thing is, I took all the controls for the show with me, and I brought them in my suitcase, so only I can play the music that ends the show. And I'm not done talking about this. And I'm going to listen. We're going to talk about this at least one time per show, and call the WWE out on its blatant disregard for the health of its athletes.
No, we won't.
No, we will, because this is just an extension of them not caring about the physical damage that their athletes incur, from concussions to medical issues, from working for them. They cut them loose and say, oh, they're just an independent contractor. It doesn't matter. It won't matter, blah, blah, blah.
I'm not sanctioning this, Vince McMahon. I'm telling you this right now. I'm trying to push the red button. I'm trying to get out of this, pal.
I'm sanctioning.
That's it.
I'm going to sanction.
Listen,
I'm doing the sanction.
Thank you to the Analytical Kate for joining us today. I may have to keep the Boston Bad Boy overseas and have him never come back because he's being inflammatory and talking about the WWE and Vince McMahon in this way. I just don't like it.
Well, you know what? You don't have to call me when I'm on vacation then.
Yeah, I probably never will again. That's it. Tune in next week.